Honor Flight Bluegrass flew its first mission in May of 2008. Honor Flight Bluegrass is part of 140 chapters serving our veterans. Since then, we have flown over 2,300 veterans to Washington, gave them the best day of their lives, treating them with honor and dignity, and welcomed them home. We've often had brothers, relatives, some guys that fought together, but basically it was just individuals whose only common bond was the same war, the war that they fought in. Well, today we're announcing that that's going to change. We have been, we've asked you to gather here together today to announce that on May 16th, 2019, we'll have a true band of brothers. Our mission that day will to have around 40 of the original Battery C artillerymen that served in Vietnam with distinction in 1968 and 69 on our honor flight. This will be in celebration of the 50th anniversary of their homecoming back to Bardstown. This will also be in recognition of 5 of their brothers that lost their lives and 40 of them that were wounded at Firebase Tomahawk on June 19, 1969. I have to make a correction here. In having wreaths for the 5 Battery C guys that died, there were 2 other Battery C soldiers. They did not die at Tomahawk. One was after, one was before. I apologize, I did not know that, and I didn't have the wreaths, but I certainly want to recognize Harold Brown and Jim Ray. And now I'd like to introduce Dick Heaton, the mayor, who's going to lead us in getting started here.
Thank you, Doug. If I could, I would like to invite everyone to please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Certainly grateful to be here with you all this afternoon, and 50 years is a long time, but it's interesting how history plays out. I know 50 years ago, and before this unit deployed and when you returned, my Uncle Gus Wilson addressed you during those times 50 years ago. So I'm honored to follow in my uncle's footsteps, but also certainly happy that the circumstances today are much different than they were back in 1969 when you all returned home. But we certainly are grateful on behalf of the city of Bardstown for your service to our nation, to our state, and our community. It's wonderful what you all have done, both in serving your country, but also since you returned home. And also I know that in 50 years' time, it's impossible for all the men of your unit to make this honor flight. So we do have the 5 wreaths here, recognizing those 5 individuals who perished in the fight on Tomahawk Hill of Battery C. And I want to recognize those men, and after I read their names, if you would, join me in a moment of silence. Jim Moore, David Collins, Ronnie Simpson, Ronnie McAvoy, Luther Chapman. And on a personal note, I would just like to say that as I look around this room today, I recognize a lot of faces here today, and your service to our country and your community didn't stop back in 1969 when you all returned home. I see many of you have continued to serve your area, your hometowns, the towns where you're living. I know some of you have been elected officials, some of you have served your churches, in extraordinary ways. Many of you I've served with you on projects and on committees around this community. And we're certainly grateful for your service and continue to do that. But at this point, I'm going to turn it back over to Doug and let him introduce our next guest. Thank you very much.
I think this is my first press conference, bear with me. Number one, I did not introduce myself. My name is Doug Foster, and I've had the pleasure and honor of being part of Honor Flight Bluegrass since the very first trip. Secondly, I said May 16th. It's October 16th, so be with me. Okay. Please welcome Dean Watts, the Judge Executive of Nelson County.
Thank you, Doug. Yeah, Doug, when you said that date, you threw me way off. I thought maybe I had miscalculated. I actually did some research on this day we're remembering today on the Wikipedia.
Okay.
In June of 1969, I was 11 years old and had an interest in keeping up with the national and international news, as well as the local news. The word communism was terrifying, and the threat seemed so real, especially when you're young. You know how that is. I remember the day the news came that Bardstown servicemen had been killed. I remember the newspaper articles and the memorial services, as Mayor was mentioning, his uncle was involved in those ceremonies. Today, the scars from the Vietnam era still linger. The memories for some of those are nightmares. The sickness from Agent Orange affects thousands of veterans today. Some people are able to cope better than others, but living a normal life was over for many when they boarded the plane or boat to go to Vietnam. Now a trip to visit the wall on the 50th anniversary is planned, and for some this may be a continuation of the healing process. Yes, even 50 years later. Let's everyone in this county support this organization and do what we can to help in getting this flight put together. Thank you.
Thank you, Dean, very much. We're blessed to have some very special guests today. And first and foremost, I want to welcome and introduce all the members of Battery C. Please stand. Please let's honor them. Well deserved. We have some guests here. Greg Burkott. Greg, are you here? He's representing Brett Guthrie. I know we have Andrew Condia here. Andrew is representing Senator Mitch McConnell. Now, both of the Brett and the senators said they couldn't be here today, but they promised that when we get to Washington, they will give us a good welcome there. Charlie Mattingly, are you here, sir? Okay, the Mattingleys, who have Mattingly Tours, are going to very generously help us with our bus logistics, and I just wanted to thank them and acknowledge them. We have here the Deputy Commissioner of the Kentucky Department of Veteran Affairs. This organization has done a tremendous amount of help for both the Lexington and the Louisville Honor Flight, and Dean Stoops. Thank you, sir. Welcome here. And very, very special note, Dean served in Battery C 77, 79, so welcome back. I want to introduce Jeff Thok. Jeff is the chairman of my chapter of Honor Flight, works tirelessly to help make these events happen. Jeff, glad to have you here. And then Lieutenant Colonel Joe Warren. Joe, did you sneak off on me? There you are. He came down from Louisville or
We're in Fort Knox today.
oh yeah, they're actually on duty at Fort Knox. So thank you very much for your team that's helping us, for you being here. I've introduced the battery, I've introduced special guests, and we're about to really get into the battery. But there's another very special group. In working with this team and getting this all set up, Ms. Betty Stone has been absolutely the energy that has pulled things and people together. I'm introducing her, but first I'm introducing the people she represents. I'm asking that all of the citizens, the families, the wives, the children of Bardstown that were the ones that stayed behind, please stand and let us give you recognition also. Please. If you have had a chance to read the book written by Jim Wilson about Sons of Bardstown, you will read and you will see that name again and again and again. She was all over the place helping everybody in really the darkest hour. And also she was worrying about her own husband, Skippy Stone. Nobody had good information. Think about how stressful that is. So she is a very special lady of selflessness and compassion. And I'm very honored to ask her to say a few words to us, my friend Betty Stone.
I don't know how to follow that. I'm here to thank you for giving me the honor of representing the families who stayed behind while our soldiers were at war. I speak for the wives, the mothers, fathers, brothers, sisters, children, relatives, and friends. Staying behind and waiting for your return was a duty that was thrust upon us with no choice in the matter. At times, we were completely in the dark, not knowing if we would see you again or even if you were alive. But here we are, beside our soldiers, just like we were back then. No matter what the circumstances we all found ourselves in, there is no doubt that our Bardstown community stood behind us, the families and you, the soldiers, every step of the way. It can never be said enough to our soldiers, thank you for your service. And to our families who waited for your return, thank you for your devotion. Your country loves you and honors you for doing your duty, and we say again with profound joy, welcome home. Welcome home. May God bless you and keep you all the remaining years of your lives. Oh, sorry, I don't take care of it. I'm glad I didn't end up.
It is now my pleasure to introduce two very special people. Don Parrish is a Bardstown native and one of the NCOs of Battery C. Don deserves a credit for reaching out to Honor Flight and getting this endeavor started and making it happen. Second here. I lost the page. No, that's not. I got it. I'm not doing Don has worked tirelessly for this cause, and those that know him know he is involved in many other ministries for this community. My other special guest is Rachel Platt. I call her the First Lady of both the communities of Louisville and Bardstown. Her 30 years of broadcast journalism has hooked her up with many, many groups and causes, but she has told me none was more special than working with Battery C. I am pleased and honored to turn over the program to Don and Rachel.
Don, at the end of this, we're going to listen to your voice because they need to hear from you instead of me. Some of you all may be wondering, what am I doing here? I'm Rachel Platt with the Fraser History Museum. Today, though, I'm representing my past life at WHAS-TV and how that fits in today in just a minute. Well, I grew up with the Vietnam War because my father served 2 tours in Vietnam as a pilot. And on the Air Force Base where I grew up, many children lost their fathers. I was one of the lucky ones because mine came home. I remember our neighbors, the Kibbies, the father missing in action literally for years, later ruled killed in action. Well, fast forward to 1995, I'm a reporter here in Louisville. I learned about this group of veterans in Bardstown wanting to make the trek back to Vietnam, to remember the place where they lost so many, a place of so many nightmares, but a trip to that same place that could possibly offer some inner peace. I read Sons of Bardstown, and then I met many of them. We're only missing Sam Boone up here today, who made the trek back to Vietnam. Myself, along with a photographer and a producer, traveled with 7 of them back to Vietnam. Don Parrish, Ronnie Hibbs, Joey Keeling, Sam Boone, Jody Hayden, Kent Bischoff, and Tom Razor for the second tour, and I recognized everybody today when they walked in the door. It was definitely a tour of healing and traveling back to their battlefield to pay the respects to lives lost and make sense of a war that in the end didn't make a whole lot of sense to many. These men, I was incredulous, still had their maps from Vietnam and pinpointed, if you recall, to the spot of that fateful battle where it happened on Tomahawk. And there in the driving rain that day when we made that trek to that battlefield, they laid a wreath, shed more tears, and they searched for answers. I'm not sure they found all of them, but I do know they seemed to find something to soothe their souls just a bit. They were embraced by the Vietnamese people in a way that helped heal their hearts just a bit as well. And now Battery C has another journey to make, and make it together 50 years after their homecoming. A trip to Washington to visit the Vietnam Wall and other memorials to honor veterans. I can't think of any city, any veterans more deserving than Battery C. For those who haven't been to Washington, this is their moment. For those of you who have, you get to make it with your family, your band of brothers. We hope to host you at the Fraser History Museum in October for a special program before you leave. I am confident that Bardstown is going to find a way to fund the trip for a unit that gave so much, the ultimate sacrifice for some. Of course, their names forever on the hearts of these men and this town. I would like to start the giving with $500 from my church. This is a ministry grant of healing, so let the kicking off begin of raising funds to get them in. It is my honor to be here today. I salute you. And I support you all, as you well know, but most of all, for everybody in Battery C here today, and the families, of course, of all those. We thank you for your service. Now, I am hoping Don Parrish, I know these are not easy times. If Don doesn't want to, I really feel like one of your all's voices needs to be heard. Don? See, this is what they did to me in Vietnam. But I finally got it.
I've never seen that.
Well, and I know these, as Don and I talked about. Don says I get emotional. But one of you, Smiley, get up
Look at
here.
me.
Someone, come on, Joe. I can tell Joe's going to do it. Just say a little something, something. They need to hear it.
I'm not used to microphones, so I hope I don't bore you, but we did enjoy the trip. It was, as Rachel described it, it was a learning experience aside the first one, there were no evidence that we had ever been on the fire base had ever been there. They planted in pine trees, if you can imagine that. I didn't know that pine trees would even grow in Vietnam, but they did. And we went to 88. We did run across one of the young fellas who was just a kid when we were there. He was a grown man, had a family, and I stayed in contact with him for a while after we got back. But the last letter I sent got no reply from it, so I don't know if somebody commandeered the letter or what happened, but we enjoyed the trip. It was made, I guess you'd say a little bit of a difference, but it was completely different from the first time we were there as far as the atmosphere, where we went. The people were very, I suppose you say, happy to see us. We did enjoy the trip, and we thank Rachel and the crew from WHS that went with us and helped make it possible. So we thank very much, Rachel.
Now they're not shy, right?
I'm Ken Bishop. When we went back over there, and I've wondered all those years how that the NVA could have pulled this thing off the way they did. Highway 1 and the train almost paralleled each other through that part of Vietnam. There was a tunnel which went through the mountain what Firebase Tomahawk was on. And about a good half the time, the train was blown up somewhere. They blow a bridge or something, but it so happens that this part of June in 1969 that the train wasn't running. And the enemy were able to stage in this tunnel, which was directly beneath the firebase. And we don't know how many days, maybe several days they were in that tunnel, but that made it easy for them to come out.
Thank you, Rachel. Betty, your words were very, very much on target for me. It's always been difficult for me to attend or be around anything regarding my or our experience in Vietnam. It's humbling, actually, for me to stand here and smile and act like the world is great, and it is. But for the life of me, these are the heroes and two men whose names aren't up there today. Now, they're at peace. God bless their soul. But their families are left behind, for the most part, struggling to make ends meet, paying the bills, getting the kids, keeping the kids out of trouble. So, thank you to all of you for being here, but let's all be mindful of the fact that the price of war is a hell of a price when you give up a life. They're at peace, but their families left behind are, I'm sure, for the most part, and I know most of the families left behind, and other families. Nearly 60,000 killed in action in Vietnam. For what really reason? And I know that that's sensitive to some, but having been there, I didn't see a damn thing. I didn't see a damn reason why we needed to be there in Vietnam, getting in the middle of some other country's struggles, much like our country's struggling today. I hope and pray that we could come to our senses and recognize the fact that the price of freedom is humongous. Don't take it for granted. Thank you. Keep it to 10 minutes.
Okay. I would just like to explain how this trip took place. And Rachel contacted us through Don, I think, and a lot of people were called to see if they wanted to go on this trip. Well, we would have a meeting, and usually it was at the corral. And Rachel and some of the others would explain what the trip was going to entail, and that we were going to have ground transportation and some interpreters and what, and we would be all fired up when that meeting took place. But 2 or 3 days later, we'd all sort of changed. I don't know if we want to do that or not. We don't know that the Vietnamese people are going to accept us. Just a short time ago we were shooting at them and they were shooting at us. But we finally, after several meetings, decided to go, and I'm not sure that if given a chance, people would have backed out at the last minute. But it was an amazing trip, and I want to thank Rachel and WHAS for conducting that trip, because it was a once-in-a-lifetime trip, and we got to go to places that we had been when we were there. They didn't look the same, but with a little imagination, you could see bunkers and you could imagine everything that took place. So one thing, I'm not probably going to say more about that, but I know there's other people here that are Vietnam veterans, and I want them to feel welcome. I don't want this to seem like only a Battery C occasion, and I want them to feel welcome to be here, and I appreciate their service, and I just, probably all I'm going to say right now, but without tearing up. So I'll turn this over to whoever wants to speak next.
Okay, Rachel, you can mark one down as a win for you. The trip that we made back in 1995 was really a bittersweet trip, but it was more sweet than bitter. We got to see a whole lot, but we also, the brotherhood of the 7 of us is just a part of the brotherhood of the rest of us. But we also have gained a sister. Thank you so much for being part of us. I really appreciate you calling. The way this went down, she called me one day and said, I see where you're wanting to make a trip back to Vietnam. We would like to go with you. And I said, who is this again? And she gives her name, and I'm saying, okay. And so we made an appointment to visit with each other the next day. When I hung the phone up, I'm thinking to myself, I have no idea who she is, because she is a news anchor of a station I don't watch. So that seemed to change as time went on, but the bottom line is we wound up with a wonderful relationship, and I'm really tickled to see Rachel again. The last time I saw her was several years ago when we were at the airport at one midnight, and I was picking up a daughter, and she was picking up her son, who I might mention was 6 months old when we made that trip back. So Rachel, thank you for being a part of this, and you need now to take the microphone, please.
Smiley's not going to talk, so I'm never going to win that one. So I'm going to turn it back over the program, but it was my honor to be with you, and as I said, originally I was hoping to make the trek with my father. He was not in the state of health to be able to do it, so you all were wonderful to travel partner with. Absolutely, and some of those stories, Smiley, don't worry, I'm not going to tell.
Rachel, thank you so much for the donation, kicking it off. I want to acknowledge a very special lady, Yvette Martin, who put on Veterans Day, put on a program at her elementary school. And I tell you, I've never felt so honored and welcome as a veteran. and their kids raised over $500, and that kicked off this campaign. So thank you, Yvette. Thanks for coming back. Okay, so I hope you've got the word that this is a campaign we're starting. Honor Flight works totally through donations. Our costs for running a mission have increased over the years. We've always put the priority in giving the best trip possible for our veterans, and certainly not a cheap one. Most of our costs now we do charter an Airbus 321 through American Airlines, but it's so important to land right at Reagan, get on the buses, and 20 minutes later, you're at the World War II Memorial. And then you're at the Korean and the Vietnam Memorial. And then we're in Arlington, and the buses get to go right up to the big white building there, auditorium, what is it called? And then we typically end up at the Iwo Jima Marine Battle Memorial. It's a long day, it's a good day. We cram a lot in because we really want to. So it is expensive. It's costing around $100,000 for a flight anymore. So we set a goal here in Bardstown to raise $25,000. Carrie signed and donated a thermometer here, and we're going to have it in the square. We, like I said, I've been part of Honor Flight since the beginning with Brian Duffy, and we've always been supported by the generosity and love of people in the area. And there's no doubt in my mind that the people of Bardstown are going to want to do the same for their veterans. So, as you leave, we've got donation envelopes. Please take 2 or 3. Please get them to somebody that'll help us out. Let me see, got everything here. And it's October 16th, so we have time. I believe we're going to have at least 40 of the original Battery C guys on the mission. It's going to be a great day. They'll be leaving from here, the Armory, very early in the morning. When they arrive back in Louisville Airport at about 9 or 9:30, that's when we pull out all the stops and we give them a great welcoming home. So I hope that you'll spread the word, and we'll be reinforcing it to donate, to help us out, and to honor these guys, and to welcome them home. And I thank you very much today, and for all my brothers and sisters from Vietnam, especially you guys, welcome home. Thank you, and God bless America.